and welcome. I'm your host, Michelle Marchant Johnson, and you are here for the monthly Man of the Month video. And I'm really excited and thrilled to be interviewing our guest today because he's an internationally known expert on self-esteem, and that is the wonderful Dr. Joe Rubino. Welcome, Joe.
Hi, Michelle. Great to be with you today.
So happy to have you here. I'm really excited about this conversation because I really believe it can help so many people in our audience here. So just a little formal introduction before we jump in, Joe. And for those of you that may not be as familiar with Joe's work, I just want to introduce you to him. Dr. Joe Rubino is the CEO of Center for Personal Reinvention.com. He's acknowledged as one of the world's foremost experts on the topic of elevating self-esteem. He is a life-changing personal development and success coach on how to restore self-esteem, achieve business success, maximize joy and fulfillment in life and productivity. And he is known for his groundbreaking work in personal and leadership development, building effective teams, enhancing listening and communication skills, life and business coaching, and optimal life planning. His best-selling books and audio programs are available in 23 languages in 58 countries. And we will stay tuned because we're going to be telling you also how you can get more access to more of Joe's work. And he has a wonderful free gift that he'll be telling us about at the end of this conversation. So welcome once again, Joe.
It's my pleasure and privilege.
Thank you so much. So these Man of the Month videos we started doing as a result of a project that I started a few years ago where I interview all male experts to help women have understanding and insights into the male psyche and to have better relationships and communication with men. And I also know, Joe, that a lot of people that are listening to this video, a lot of the women out there have been through a relationship or two, right? Maybe hit a few speed bumps and potholes along the road to love, if you will. I myself experienced that too. And I know that some of that, some of the relationship challenges that we experience in our lives are based upon what's going on inside of us, our own self-esteem, how we value ourselves, and how we show up. So I just want to put that out there as kind of a little bit of a overshadowing or an overhanging for our conversation today, kind of a framework that we can build around that. So I'm just going to invite you to jump in right there and pick up where I'm positioning us and start giving us your wisdom.
Well, what I'd like to start with is by saying that there's no accidents, that the people that we have been in relationships with are attracted to us and we're attracted to them for a reason. Our energy is consistent with whatever it is that we attract in our lives. And that's good, bad, and indifferent, whether we like it or not. And what happens to all of us is that early on in life, as a child, a traumatic episode happened. Someone said or did something, and we responded in such a way that it typically gave us an emotional fix for the first time that we have replicated dozens and then hundreds and then thousands and then on a regular basis since then. And at that time, when someone said or did something that upset us, we made something up about ourselves, we made something up about the other person, and we made something up about the world in general. And it gave us a mood, it gave us an emotional fix. Most people have one of four: anger, sadness, fear, or anxiety. And so that's important to know, because when you can recognize how you're wired, you can see that you're not seeing things clearly in that moment of stress, when the heat is on, when there's a challenge. And this is going to be very important in our relationships, because the same sort of bumps in the road that you speak of, the same sorts of challenges that we experience with a significant other in a relationship are because of things that we can't be within ourselves and within other people. And they all stem from decisions that we made early on in life. So I'll be giving our viewers an exercise a little bit later to help you to diffuse the upsets, to live an upset-free life. And it's possible actually to live that sort of an upset-free life if you get good at this one exercise that I'll be giving you. But it's very important to recognize that there are no accidents and that we need to take responsibility for every relationship that we attract and we are entering into, whether they work out to our liking or not, because somehow, and this isn't about blame or fault, but being able to respond in such a way that we're powerful in that relationship, that we're powerful in promoting our own happiness and promoting our own well-being. And so let me stop there to see if you have any questions or thoughts so far.
I actually have quite a few of them. It's quite intriguing what you're saying here. So a couple of thoughts, and I just want to hear your point of view on this. Sometimes I hear, so you mentioned anger, sadness, fear, and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you said, if I heard you correctly, that when we're in one of those states of mind, we're not thinking clearly, we're not going to be making our best decisions. And I've heard that the underpinning of all emotions it's either based in fear or it's based in love. And since this audience is wanting to move to that place of love, I think that it's really important to remember that when we're in these emotions, when we're feeling one of these emotions, some of these, in fact, fear is one you mentioned, but I think anger, sadness, and anxiety can also be fear-based. I think it's really important to remember that we don't make our best decisions in that state. And I also think that we have to be wise and we have to be careful when we're coming out of a relationship or a relationship is ending, that we don't, out of anger, sadness, fear, or anxiety, rebound back into something that's really unhealthy.
Yeah, one of the things that I'd like to invite people is to make a commitment right now to living deliberately. And living deliberately means that, one, there are no accidents and that you are totally taking responsibility for everything that shows up in your life. And so if a relationship in the past has not gone well for you, take responsibility for your end of things. And, I understand that perhaps the other person, had a large role in that failure of the relationship. But for some reason, you attracted the relationship, or you agreed to the relationship, or you bought into the relationship and that energy. So let's go back to that emotional red flag that is the mood that gets triggered when we're in the time of an upset. And that's really important because many times it causes us to ignore our intuition and to go into our head and to start to justify, well, I don't want to be alone. I really want to find somebody, and this person does have a good job, or they are good looking, or whatever it is that allows us to bypass that intuitive state that tells us, this person's energy really isn't a fit for me. This person really doesn't treat people with respect. This person doesn't have the sort of friends that would be a mesh for me, and that says a lot about that person. There's something off about this. So one, if we can learn to trust our intuition is based in love, and it's always accurate. It's always sourced in our higher selves. It's there to guide us. But many times when we enter into a relationship that isn't really supportive for us, we ignore that intuition, and we now start to think about all of the stuff that our negative self-talker is talking about. Well, if you don't go for this person, who knows when you're going to meet somebody else? You don't want to be alone. This person likes you, give them a chance, or whatever that self-talk tells us that has us can the intuition and instead go against the grain of what we know we should be doing to support us, or at least to be on the lookout to get the signs to see if it's a green light to have this person's energy match with us or not. Mm-hmm. So getting back to our emotional reactive states, one of the things that we can start to do is we can start to look at, as we enter into a relationship and the newness wears off, and we start to see someone's true energy coming forth, their true colors, so to speak. We can now start to evaluate from our own perspective what it is about us that is causing us to either live in harmony and in peace and love, or to be in this upset. And if it's in a chronic upset, then that's an indication that we're getting these signals on a regular basis that we're ignoring. So let me go through an exercise, if I could, right now, that will really help us. And the exercise, you could do this exercise about an upset that happened with a relationship, or you could do an exercise about an upset that happened as you were a little child with a parental figure or someone that was important to you. It doesn't matter, because what we find is that what we made up about ourselves and others and the world and the moods are the same or very similar. So it doesn't matter if you can't remember an early upset, as long as you can remember an upset, that'll be fine. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'm going to ask you to write down your answers. So the first is to go back to an upset that you want to recall, where you became angry, sad, afraid, or anxious. And in that upset, go there and ask yourself, okay, what did that other person say or do? And write that down. So get clarity around as briefly and succinctly as possible. Don't go into a whole lot of story here. Just what are the facts? What did that person say or do? And based upon those words or those deeds, what did you interpret or buy into or make up that made you angry, sad, afraid, anxious? With me so far?
Mm-hmm.
So there are some facts. There are some interpretations that you made up that gave you your mood. Now I'm going to ask you an all-important question. Are you willing to give up your right to be right in this moment by creating a new interpretation that has no mood associated with it? And to do that, you have to give up this right to make the other person wrong, to be invalidated, to dominate the other person or control them. You have to give up your right to be on your little pity pot. You have to give up your right to be a victim. And all of that is out of a commitment to your happiness and to your energy and relationships being positive moving forward. And so it's going to be difficult to do this oftentimes because we're addicted to being right. We're addicted to that emotional fix. It's like a heroin addict's fix. So if it's anger, we get to be forceful in the moment. We get to dominate others. We get to be right. And we get to tell people off and really get our will be done. If it's sadness, we get to feel sorry for ourselves. 350 million people in the world are addicted to sadness. These are people who are clinically depressed. Their brain chemistry actually changes. So it's a very real physical reaction. But what does it come down to as a bottom line? These people have sought out and identified people, occurrences, happenings in the world that make them sad. It's not that they like being sad. It's because they like the contrary benefits of being there. They don't get to take responsibility for making their lives happy. They don't get to empower their lives. They get to be a victim and feel sorry for themselves and evoke the pity of other people. And they get to stay stuck in suffering and say, it's not my fault. I was with an abusive person. It's not my fault. I was with a person who was mean and cruel. It's not my fault. I was with the person who was lazy, or whatever that justification is. You're going to give up that your right to be right about it, and you're going to create a new interpretation in the moment of the upset. So going back to what they said or what they did, what's a new interpretation that you can create in the moment now that has no anger, sadness, fear, anxiety associated with it? And if you're willing to do that, create that new interpretation and write it down. Maybe the interpretation is as simple as the person did the best they know how to do based upon how they see the world, knowing that 99% of an upset is about the person who's upset and only 1% about the person causing the upset, supposedly. So as you create this new interpretation, you now get to give up your right to be a victim. You get to stay in a relationship with the person and improve that relationship. And you also get to now take action that strengthens the relationship instead of ruining or damaging the relationship further. So, Michelle, if you like, we can go through an example. I can
Yeah,
do.
I'd love to go through an example, because I think this is an incredibly powerful exercise that you're teaching us, and such a beautiful way to be able to release some of our stories.
Okay. So why don't we role play it, and you can either make something up, or you could work on a legitimate upset that you experienced recently. It doesn't have to be a relationship upset, but it'd be a little bit more pertinent if you could think of one.
Okay, let me see if I can think of something.
And it doesn't have to be a relationship with a significant other. It could be
Okay,
a relationship.
I thought of one.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So what happened?
So my friend and I had made a plan to go visit another friend, and she scheduled the time without checking with me, and it didn't work out with my schedule, and then she went without me, and I felt left out.
Okay. Great. So those are the facts that you had discussed going together somewhere.
Yeah, to go visit another friend that we hadn't seen in a long time.
Okay. Great. And the facts are that she didn't check it, run it by you first to see if it worked for you, and you weren't able to cancel your schedule and go.
Right. I had to work, and we had talked about touching base on schedule before she scheduled it, but she went ahead and scheduled it anyway and went without me.
Okay. So what did you make up about your friend, first of all, that caused what was your mood? Was it anger, sadness, fear?
It was sadness. I felt sad. I felt left out, and it made me feel like she didn't care about me or respect me, or that maybe she wanted to exclude me. That was what I initially interpreted it as.
Yeah. So those are all the interpretations, and the facts are that she made an appointment and didn't work for your schedule.
Right.
Right. So what did you make up about yourself? In that moment.
Thinking what I made up about myself.
What kind of person?
I made up that maybe I wasn't wanted, or maybe that I wasn't appreciated by my friends in the way that I had thought that I was, and that maybe they didn't like me or care about me as much as I thought they did.
Okay, great. And that made you sad.
That made me sad.
Okay. So what now, are you willing to give up your right to be a victim in this episode and create a new interpretation that has no sadness around it?
Yes, I am. So
what could that interpretation be about your friend?
It could be that she too is busy, and she got excited about going to visit the other friend and went ahead and made the appointment and wanted to keep it because they already had that set.
Okay, great. So it wasn't personal. It was about her, and she messed up, basically, right?
Right.
So you can forgive her for that. You can realize that it had nothing to do with you. It was her doing, and maybe out of expediency or whatever, she made the appointment without checking your schedule. Maybe she thought that you could be flexible and you weren't able to.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there any action that would allow you to remain whole, keep the relationship strengthened, and to be happy in the process?
Yeah, and I think this might go right along with what you teach, Joe. It would be for me to get recentered and refocused in knowing my own value and my own worth, which is not diminished in any way by this experience. Because at the end of the day, I really do believe that I matter to my friends, and I think this was just a blip.
So, and to take that one step further, is there any way you could set another time to either go with this one friend to visit the other, or maybe go yourself?
Yes, there is. And I feel like I can also, like, energetically, I don't feel like I really need to have a big conversation or anything about it. I feel like I can just energetically forgive and release this.
Okay, great. And, a place to look, and again, this isn't about blame or fault, but just a place for you to look is, when you were having this conversation with your friend initially, did you communicate a request to check out a date with you so that you could make sure that you would be free to make that happen? Or did you assume that she would be doing that?
I don't believe it was an assumption, but I don't know if it was a really direct request. We kind of said, yeah, let's touch base on our schedules and then set up this.
Okay, great. So knowing how it all transpired, maybe one of the lessons for you could be in the future, when a similar scenario happens, I'm going to make sure that I'm clear about my request that my schedule be honored. And you might say something like, Susie, you know, I'm very busy these days and I really do want to come with you and I think we're going to have a great time. And so would really ask, before you make an appointment to go and visit Jane, would you check it by me to make sure that I'm free that date? So my commitment is to make and to do the same with you so that we find a win-win here where your schedule works and my schedule works so we can go and have a great time. So something where you go out of your way to avoid any possible misinterpretation on the other person's part. But you know, you've already released it, you've forgiven her, you've not taken it personally, so you've done a lot of great work there already. And it's just a matter of, as an example, for someone, if they had experienced a similar upset and they were still stuck on it, thinking nobody likes me, you know, they did this on purpose to me, and it made me sad, and I resent this person for doing that. And it's a downward spiral if that energy stays in place. So thank you. That's a great example as to how to separate facts from interpretations, identify the mood that caused the upset, release the anger, release the sadness, release the anxiety or the fear, and look for a new interpretation that supports you, that keeps you whole and supports the relationship, and then an action that you can take that will make you happy, that will strengthen the relationship, that will move your life in a forward direction. And that little exercise is one that I'd suggest that you do along with keeping an upset journal. So an upset journal is nothing more than a notebook or a Word document where every time you're in an upset, you go through those questions. You identify what was said, what you interpreted about what was said, the mood that it created that caused the upset, and you want to eventually you want to see a pattern here. And the pattern is typically that in times of stress, when the heat is on, you go to anger or sadness or fear or anxiety or some other definable emotional state that doesn't serve you. And people will say, well, you know what? I had a right to be angry. I had a right to be sad. You know, they did this to me. It's not that you don't have a right to it. You have a right. But do you want to be sad your whole life? Do you want to be angry your whole life? Do you want to be a victim? And my assertion is that it doesn't serve you. You can be happy or you can be right, but you can't be both. So my invitation is for you to get clarity around the emotional move that drives you and to release it in the moment, create the new interpretation, and then take some action that supports the relationship and your happiness moving forward. And if you can start to do that in your relationships, you will see how giving up your right to make the other person wrong, giving up your right to be a victim will absolutely support the relationship. And communication, speaking about this with the person, will serve you as well, because a lot of times the withholds that we have in relationships, we stuff our anger, we stuff our sadness, and we resent that person. And then they do something else, and then now it's two things that they did. And before long, we have a whole history of resentments and anger or frustration or sadness or fears built up that don't support us. And we wonder where the relationship went south, because now we withhold our love, we withhold our communication, we withhold the things that are most valuable in a relationship. And as a result, the relationship dies. So taking full responsibility for our communication and our interpretations is really a real key to making the relationship thrive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love this exercise, Joe. I think it's really powerful. And I also love the idea of not making assumptions and going back to like where the original agreement was made. Like when my friend and I initially talked about going to visit our other friend and thinking about the communication. And I think this is really a especially relevant point for this audience, because as I've interviewed so many men over the last few years, one of the messages that has come through so clearly is I've had so many men say some version of, we don't speak hint and we'd like to please you, but we also need to know specifically, clearly what it is you're asking for and what you're hoping for us to provide for you. So just as a simple example, I can go past the garbage can and say, whoo, that garbage can stinks, which is my way of saying, honey, will you take out the garbage? But he'll walk by and go, I don't really smell anything. He just hears the literal of what I said, which is it stinks. And he's like, I don't smell it.
Yeah, doesn't stink to me.
Exactly. We have a different level of what smells.
Right.
And but if I say, honey, would you please take out that garbage because it smells pretty stinky to me, then he's happy to do it. Yeah. But he doesn't hear my other version as a request.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit further about making powerful requests.
Okay.
So requests that are powerful are clear and succinct, as you mentioned. So they leave no wiggle room for misinterpretation. They're grounded in time. So you might say, honey, can you please take out that garbage before you go to bed tonight, so that it won't smell up the kitchen. And I'd really appreciate that. So they're grounded in time. If there are any conditions around the request, you're going to spell them out so that the person has no doubt about what you're actually requesting. And you're going to get their acknowledgement. They have the right to accept the request. They can turn down the request. They can counter offer the request and say, you know what, Michelle, I threw out my back and I can't throw out the garbage tonight, but I will throw it out tomorrow after I take a jacuzzi and take care of my back problem. Does that work for you? So what that counter offer did was it left the relationship whole. The person checked out if that works, because what life is oftentimes a negotiation where we have things that we want, they have things that they want, and unless we communicate them in a way that's clean and clear and powerful and without a demeaning tone, which is really important, because if the tone is condescending, if it's rude, if it's angry, if it's lacking respect, you're going to create the very response that you don't want. You're going to create pushback, because if we're resisting something and our tone is not loving, nurturing, open, and clean, then we need to take responsibility for creating the bad results when they show up, because everyone is doing a dance. And if you don't like the dance that you and your significant other are doing, then it's your responsibility to alter the dance step, because they can't continue to do the same dance if you are changing your dance. And the important thing to remember there is that taking responsibility means there are no victims. It means you are able to respond in that time and moment in a way that supports you, supports the other person, and supports the relationship. So it's not that you don't have a right to be angry at what he just said or did, but the question is, does that anger serve you in the moment? And can you start to develop a different muscle, a different dance, where you now start to respond with love? And you start to train the other person how they are to be with you in a way that is clean and clear and concise and loving. So that might look like, Michelle, I've made a commitment to always speak to you in a loving tone, without anger, without condescension, without making you small. And I realize that I've done those things in the past and they've been around my stuff. So that is my new commitment to you. And if you hear that I'm speaking to you in any of those ways, I want you to remind me what my commitment is. Would you be willing to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, great. And I also have a request that you work on speaking to me with that same sort of tone that supports our relationship. Is that something you'd be willing to do? And it's important to check it out because maybe there's such anger involved in the relationship that in the moment the person is injecting their vein with anger, like that heroin addict that we discussed.
Right.
Maybe they're not willing to give up their right to be a victim in the moment. Maybe they want to be right about something. And so you have to look at, is this the best time to have this conversation? Or maybe you'll have the conversation when the heat is off, when you're not in that high intensity moment with the person, and you could actually create a listening to be heard.
Yeah, so this to me sounds like partnership. We're creating a partnership agreement here if we're positioning something that way, and this prevents us from making assumptions. Because one of the things that I think is the biggest challenge and problem in a lot of relationships is making assumptions. We tend to come to our relationships and interact with our partner from having an agenda or an idea of how they're supposed to be or what's supposed to happen, or how they're supposed to be showing up. And a lot of times our partner has no idea that we have these expectations or assumptions. And so what you're modeling here, I think, is really powerful and empowering because we're partnering. We're creating agreements and an understanding so that we have a agreement that both parties are clear about what we're agreeing to. We're not just guessing or getting upset, creating upsets or stories because our partner's not doing it the right way when they don't even really know what our expectations or agenda is.
Yes, and that brings up another great distinction here, which I'd like to speak to, and that is that you often hear people in relationships say, relationships are 50-50. Both people have to give 50% and expect 50%. And I'm going to say that is a formula for disaster for a relationship, because what is left unsaid there is that you need to give me what I want for me to give you what you want. And so I'm going to suggest in place of that, you look at committing to 100%, expecting zero, and inviting them to commit to 100% and expecting zero. Because when you are totally committed, you're committed 100%. You're not committed 50%. It's not conditional based upon what you say. It's not conditional based upon what that other person's mood is in the moment. You have a commitment to the relationship. You have a commitment to love. You have a commitment to clean communication. And that's your commitment. And return yourself to that commitment and decide to live deliberately in the moment and keep a journal with respect to how often what your commitments are, first of all, your commitments to yourself, your commitments in the relationship, your commitments to the other person, and how often you're honoring those commitments. And what qualities do you want to work on that will be more representative of qualities that you want to be known for, so that when someone thinks of your name, they'll think, oh, that person exudes love, that person exudes fairness, or compassion, or contribution, or whatever it is, empowerment, whatever it is that is most important to you, and develop those qualities on purpose. Ask yourself, if I were a person committed to inspiring others to be their best, how would I speak right now? Or if I were a person committed to harmony, what would my response be in the face of adversity, in the face of anxiety, or when the heat is on and there's a stressful situation? So when you get clarity around what your commitments are, life becomes simple. You're walking down a path in the forest, you come to a fork in the road. Just knowing that you have the choice of going right, the path that honors your commitments, the path of heart that is in consistency with the qualities you want to be known for, or the path that you usually take, which is the path of convenience, the path that destroys your relationship, the path that dishonors your commitments, the path that is the easy way out, but has great costs associated with it. To the extent that you can get clarity around when you're at that moment of choice, when you have the fork in the road where you actually can choose, your personal power is a function of, one, recognizing the opportunity to make a choice at the fork and choosing the path that is consistent with your commitments and with the kind of relationship that you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think this is really, really interesting because I think if both people are 100% committed to love, to the relationship, to showing up fully and honoring those commitments, there is going to be an energetic exchange that's going to be satisfying to both people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to be out of expectation or shame or guilt or anger or that sort of thing that they're providing that for their partner.
Yep. And, furthermore, what do you do when you make a mistake? Do you clean it up? Do you commit to doing better? Do you admit your shortcomings? Or do you justify them? Do you make the other person wrong to hide what you did? Do you lie about it? So that's really important, because one of the distinctions that we talk about in our programs is how to embrace problems. We typically have it that problems are bad and to be avoided. So when we are in a relationship with a person that has a problem, what is our relationship to that person? Do we avoid them? Do we, dominate them, make them wrong? Do we try to fix the problem quickly and, so we can move on because we don't have the space to be with them as long as they have a problem? Or do we see the problem as, here's a gift for both of us, a gift for me to learn how to be more effective? Because to the extent that we're in development, difficult people are our best teachers. We grow the most when we're in the presence of difficult people. So we can choose to avoid a problem, or we can look for the gift in the problem. We can say, what am I to learn here out of this relationship, out of this communication? And who am I being that this is showing up, this chronic condition that I don't like around me? So if you're constantly arguing with the person that you're with, take responsibility. Who am I being that we're always in an argument? And how can I diffuse the argument? How can I be more effective? How can I actually give the person something that will empower them instead of cause them to go through that resisting cycle where you say something to me, I say something to you, and before we know it, we have a downward spiral. So being in development is really all about making life work. And when you're a student of personal development, when you're a student of your relationship, when you want your relationships to be loving and powerful and empowering and happy and fun, then there's a whole set of rules that would support you to live by, as opposed to whatever you're doing now that is causing a different result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think it's important to have that ability to reflect when a problem arises, like our partner, for example, someone we're partnered with or dating or married to, how we're going to show up in the face of something like that. And if we're going to be able to still maintain that commitment that we made to the relationship, to love, to showing up that way. Because that's when a lot of these things collapse, is when we get under pressure, right? Pressure or stress of some kind within the relationship or outside of the relationship.
Well, whenever we have a commitment, you can expect the first thing to come up is a problem or an interruption to that commitment. And
don't you love how the universe loves to give us these tests, right?
That's right, because we're in development. This is a school of learning for us, right? And you can see how committed you are to that commitment based upon how you respond in the times of stress, when there are problems to deal with. That's an opportunity. That's a gift to you to work on who you're being in the time of stress, in the time when things aren't going smoothly, because anybody can have a great relationship when things are nice and smooth and loving and happy. But it's in the challenging times that test our mettle and test what are we really committed to, and how good are we at creating new interpretations that empower us? How good are we at our clean, loving communication when the stress is on, so that we don't damage the relationship further, so that we don't call names, so that our tone is supportive as opposed to condescending or angry or whatever that is your tendency.
Yeah, and I also loved what you said earlier, and I think I really believe this too, Joe, when you said maybe your way of interpreting things is that person is doing the best they could with what they have to work with at that particular time. Because I believe in almost every circumstance that really is the case in human relationships. And when we can see ourselves and others through those eyes, we can have some compassion and some forgiveness, which helps us to be able to move forward.
Yeah, and we're not condoning bad behavior. What
Right.
we're saying is that we don't have to be at the effect of it. We can actually be powerful in the face of it. And so, one, we get to train people how they are to be with us, but we get to be effective in that training. So, yelling at someone is not an effective way to teach them how to respect you, because you're not respecting them in that moment.
Yeah.
So, this is all great growth opportunities for us, and we have attracted whoever it is that we have attracted because we need to learn and to grow and to have these lessons that result in fun and happiness and love and clear communication and all the things that we want. And so that's why we attracted them, so that we can actually manifest the personal development, the personal growth that comes with manifesting what we want in the relationship.
Yeah, I want to ask you just another question about this because I think it might be in the minds of some people that are listening, Joe. And I really want to tap into your wisdom here. So, coming back to what you said at the very beginning of our conversation, and just said again that we attract people into our lives. There's a reason we attract people into our lives. If there's someone out there listening, and I suspect there might be, that's just kind of like bristling at that thought, if they've attracted someone who is really abusive or really terrible or have had horrible things done to them at the hand of someone else, how do we interpret that? Help us make some more sense of this, because generally speaking, I actually really agree with you, but I'm also like worried there might be people out there thinking about that or looking at it through that lens.
Well, first, it's not your fault. So this isn't about fault or blame, but it's
Right.
about being able to respond. It's about being response able. And so there has to be something about you that would allow an abuse to happen. And it could be that you didn't experience this person as being abusive. You had no idea that they were going to be that way. And so there's a difference between a one-time event where it comes out of the blue, where you misinterpreted someone, versus a chronic abusive situation that you allowed to fester. And that is a different scenario that I'd like to talk to here. So if the situation is chronic and you have been or are in an abusive relationship, then you have to look at how you hold yourself. Do you hold yourself as someone worthy of love and respect? Or did something happen in your past where you're not complete? So one of the things that we do in our self-esteem program is 3 different exercises, 3 different areas of development. The first is healing and completing your past. Because if you're incomplete with your past, if someone, a parental figure or someone else, did something to you, it could be a bullying situation, a spanking. Your mom could have said, "What's the matter with you, Michelle?" Or your dad could have been an alcoholic. It could be 1,000 different things. But if you're not complete with that, if you aren't absolutely clear that you were not to blame in that scenario as a child, that you have forgiven yourself for your role in it, whatever that might be. You've forgiven the perpetrator. Again, not condoning their behavior, but knowing that they did the best they knew how to do based on how they see the world, even if it was far less than acceptable. So you've healed and completed your past. You've moved on to the point where it no longer hounds you. You don't lose sleep over it. You don't think about it, and you're not at the effect of that bad behavior any longer. And there's a whole lot of exercise that you can do to release that. Then you do a proper assessment of what's so right now in the key core areas of your life presently, the area of your health and appearance, the area of your wealth and finances, your career or your job, your spiritual and personal development, your relationships, and the area of having fun and pursuing your passions and just living life full out with passion. In each of those areas, if you were to rate from 1 to 10, if you're not a 10, then something's missing in that area that, if put into place, would support you to be happier, more fulfilled, more self-actualized in that area. And so how do we do that? Well, once you're clear about where you are, you can now develop a roadmap. You can develop an action plan that starts with your life purpose. We all have a life purpose. Most of us aren't living it. You're either living it or you're not. So I know we don't have the time for me to get into a lot of detail here, so I'm just going to give you the outline. You identify and declare your life purpose that makes life so meaningful and worthwhile for you that you can't wait to get up to live the next 400 years of your life. You're so in love with your life. You then create a vision for your life, a written vision that's first person present tense. In other words, I am experiencing the love of my life. I'm living in the place of my dreams. I am in love with my career. Your vision encompasses the qualities that you want to be known for, the being qualities. I'm known as a warm, loving, empathetic person. I am passionate about championing children. I am a teacher. I teach other people how to live emotion-free without bad emotions, I'm talking about. Whatever that is important to drive you. Your typical day at work and your typical day at play. Describe that. What is that like? Use all of your emotions. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you tasting? What are you sensing? So that you're actually vividly experiencing this vision that you're writing. So you're being, you're doing, you're having. What are you surrounding yourself with? Qualities of the people that are in your environment. Where are you living? With whom? What are you surrounding yourself with? Pets, perhaps, or plants, or maybe you're living in your dream home by the ocean, or whatever that is that, you have a magic wand here with my permission to not let any stops prevent you from writing what your dream vision is. Who would you contribute to in that vision? Not only yourself, but how are you going to inspire others when they hear you speak your vision? So you're actually creating a vision for your dream life. And then once you are clear about where you'd love to be and you expect to be there, you're going to read that vision morning and at night when you get up and before you go to bed. And then you're going to create a structure to achieve that vision on purpose. And that includes short-term, medium-term, long-term goals that align with the vision. You're going to have an action plan that allows you to achieve your goals on purpose. Now, you could be indigent. You could have no significant relationship that is meaningful for you. You could be homeless. It doesn't matter. You create the vision of your dream life. Now you start to create actions that get you there. Some of them get you a short way there. Once you're there, you rewrite the vision and you rewrite the goals to take you to the next level. So your action plan includes the short-term results, the short-term goals, the medium-term goals, and the long-term goals. And so maybe it involves saving $10 a day so that you have a reserve. Maybe it involves, stopping drinking. Maybe you're only going to drink on the weekends, or you're only going to drink at social events, or maybe you're not going to drink at all, or smoke. You're going to give up smoking, or you're going to start eating healthy in such a way. You're going to exercise. Whatever it is that will support you, those goals align with your ultimate vision. And not only are you going to have an action plan, but you're going to have a personal development plan. Because when you put together a structure that's this concrete and this elaborate, problems are going to show up. And unless you're working on being the person that you want to be to empower your life, you're going to allow the problems to derail you. You're going to go back to the status quo. You're going to say, oh, I knew that I couldn't do this. You're going to make justifications for giving up. So get clarity on what your commitment to, and get clarity around what is it costing you to play small and to not go for the brass ring. not to go for the dream life. Because you know what? We are given such wonderful opportunities in this life. Every day presents for us serendipitous opportunities that we either see and we act upon once we're committed to changing and transforming. If we don't see them, it means that we're not aware of what's important to us, and so those opportunities go by. The people that we meet, these people, new people will show up for you once you make such a commitment. And if the people in your life are not consistent with the type of energy that you want to be around, then shift your energy, shift your commitments, shift who you're being and other people that are consistent with that. And the new habits that you'll be developing along the way that are consistent with your happiness, your abundance, your relationships, your love, and your harmony will show up as well. So that's kind of an overall structure that our self-esteem programs support people to create, because I'm firmly of the belief that if you want a warm, loving relationship that works, by not having soaring self-esteem, you're operating at a deficit, and you're a whole lot less likely to have that life of your dreams if you don't have that high self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Joe, I really loved this conversation. I really feel like you've shared some really, really important things and some really helpful tools and some reframes to help people out there. And I really appreciate I really appreciate you being so generous with us with your wisdom. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And I also know that you have a gift for the audience, and everyone can click on the link below the video that you're watching from to get that. But Joe, will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, the gift is called 7 Steps to Soaring Self-Esteem. It starts out with a 45-minute audio program that talks about some key principles. And it also comes with 7 mini course lessons. And the lessons have a principle that we talk about, like managing your reactive state, which I discussed today, for example. And then it has an exercise, so you can actually map that principle onto your life. You can experience what it's like, because unless you experience the principle, you won't get it. Balance is riding a bike. And until you develop balance, you can't really ride a bike. And so these are the distinctions that these 7 lessons will give you. And these are just a taste of what it's like to live deliberately. A couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks into the program, you'll receive a 1-hour video that is called The #1 Secret to Success and Happiness in Life. And it's a video that I did for public television that goes into more detail around all the big picture, the life purpose, the creating the vision, the actions, the personal development plan, healing and completing your past, all of that we touched in brief detail today. So those are gifts just to thank you for taking a look at our work. And if I could go one step further, Michelle,
Sure.
for those of you that are interested in the whole relationship concept, we certified relationship coaches, and these same principles are very valuable for people who want to work on their own relationship. So that if you go to certifiedrelationshipcoaching.com, you'll find that program that will support this whole conversation of developing yourself into your most powerful, attractive, charismatic relationship partner. And so that is a program that I encourage people to look into if the relationships aspect, either coaching and developing an income around supporting others in a relationship, or enhancing your own relationship, or helping people that you love and care about to their relationship.
Thank you, Joe. And I again want to invite everybody to click on the link below to get Joe's free gifts. And also, if you haven't subscribed already to the YouTube channel, you're going to want to subscribe here, leave a comment below, because we'll have future Man of the Month videos as well as other videos that I release on a regular basis. So, Joe, I want to thank you once again. And I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you soon next month for another Man of the Month. Bye for now.